minute or two, or if you want to go ahead and start with introductions, or I got 5:59, so you might give it another couple of minutes.
Yeah, give it a couple of minutes.
For those of you who are joining us, if you have questions or concerns you want to make sure we see and try to address, you can put those into the Q&A box, which should be, if you're on a Zoom, down at the bottom. If you click on that, you should be able to enter a question and we will do our best to answer it. There's also a chat that we will be trying to monitor. And we already have one question, is can you explain what the Arkansas Public Policy Panel is? And that's actually on our agenda, so yes, we will. But the more surefire way to make sure your questions get seen is if you put them in the Q&A, but we do have folks monitoring the chat as best we can too. This is like my 4th or 5th ever webinar, so I feel like a pro compared to the first one, but we might goof up here or there, so please forgive us, but we're learning as best we can. I'm just going to go ahead and answer some questions. Someone asked if that they heard Hutchinson say that schools cannot make students wear masks, and asked if that was true. And my understanding is at today's press conference, he said that was going to be up to individual school districts and that they can require masks. So I think the governor's position seems to be evolving a bit as we go along on this issue. And you asked if that applies to charter schools, and I assume since he said yes, that that's going to apply to all schools. We have one more guest that we're waiting for, and she is trying to get on. She's, I think, stuck. I just got a note that she's stuck behind a traffic accident, but so we might have a little bit late. So we have lots more people joining us. So if you're joining us, if you can, we're going to get started in just a minute. We're giving just a couple more minutes for folks to join in. If you have questions or want to join the conversation, there's a Q&A box at the bottom of your chat screen, and you can put your questions in there. There's also a chat box. And if you are on Facebook, you can leave questions or comments in the comments thread on the Facebook feed, and we have staff monitoring that too, so we'll try to incorporate that as well.
Hello.
Ms. Love, I think we're ready for you to start whenever you're ready.
I am ready to start. All right. Good evening, and welcome to this education town hall brought to you by the Arkansas Public Policy Panel and its member groups, one of which may be in your hometown. The South Arkansas Coalition of Communities include groups in Dumas, Gould, Huddick, Magnolia, Marvel, Monticello, Prescott, Star City, and Strong. I'm Alice Love, and I'm with the Desha County Social Justice Advocacy Alliance, headquartered in Dumas, Arkansas. And your other facilitator will be Bill Kopsky, who is the director of the Arkansas Public Policy Panel.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us tonight.
At this time, At this point, we'd like to do introductions of our panelists. They include the president of the Arkansas Education Association, Carol Flemings, director of the Arkansas School Board Association, Tony Protho, a concerned and involved citizen of Marble School District, Danielle Wright, and Arkansas's Teacher of the Year for 2019 and 20, Stacy McAdoo. Welcome, and we appreciate you being present to be a part of this forum. Just a little bit about why this education forum. The community leaders of the panel's education caucus meet monthly to discuss issues of concern in our communities and also discuss possible strategies to address those concerns. The coronavirus shut down schools and brought every child and their families to an AMI delivery of instruction. That's an alternative method of instruction. The community group leaders wrestled with how to maintain just basic services such as instruction, assessment and feedback, nutrition, and parental involvement. The group leaders knew that life after the corona or COVID-19 would be drastically different, and the leaders wanted to be able to be at the table helping to make decisions as to what was best for their kids. Since the entire nation is grappling with surviving this virus, Arkansas is no exception, and I know that it's touched lives in your hometown. So we wanted to broaden the conversation and get a broader voice of the issues in urban and rural school districts and work collaboratively as communities and with our local school districts to find solutions that work. Finding the best solution may be something never tried before. And to make it work, we all need to roll up our sleeves and pitch in. With that said, I'll turn you to Bill Kopsky, director of the Arkansas Public Policy Panel, to share a little bit about what he is about.
Hi, thank you for joining us, everybody. I'm just going to be very brief. The panel was formed in 1963, actually working on public school education issues and working originally on desegregation of the public schools, and equity still remains a core part of what our concerns are when it comes to education and making sure that quality education is available to everybody across the state. Our fundamental belief is that the people who are most impacted by issues should be at the table helping define what we do. And so we are engaged with community members all over the state, both locally organizing in their school districts, but then also pushing on changes in state policy. I really appreciate all of you who are joining us tonight for this conversation. And I also am the father of a 7 and a 9-year-old. And so I have the anxiety about what's about to happen that I think a lot of you share. And I know all of our educators certainly have a lot of anxiety about sort of where we are too. And I just want to express my appreciation to our panelists and Ms. Love. With that, I'm going to keep it really short and sweet. Let me say one more thing, which is we have some resources on our website, which is arpanel.org, that you can find. And then we also have a sister organization that lobbies at the state legislature together as a coalition of 68 member groups, and that is the Citizens First Congress. And there's some great resources on their website too, which is citizensfirst.org. But Ms. Love, I'm going to turn it back to you, and let's get the conversation going.
All righty. Well, at this point, why don't we go ahead and start with Carol, and she's going to share some information with us about what it should look like in safety for our school districts in the fall. Carol?
Thank you, Alice. I want to thank
All
you for
right.
inviting me to participate tonight and represent the thousands of educators in our public schools who work with our children every day and who rose to the challenges of COVID-19 when our schools were closed to in-person instruction in March. This pandemic continues to present unprecedented challenges to our schools, our economy, and our nation's families. This has exacerbated racial inequities and placed a disproportionate burden on communities of color throughout the country. We know that the ultimate goal for the upcoming school year is to have in-person instruction. However, the decision for when the schools are open should be based on the health and safety of our students and educators. We must consider all of our students, those who are medically fragile, those who have disabilities, live in low socioeconomic areas, rural, urban, and more. The decisions to open should not be based on an arbitrary start date or any other priority. COVID-19 has resulted in guidance from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education on how schools can be reimagined with the Ready to Learn model. It's important to note, a package of Act 1240 waivers approved by the State Board of Education Monday did not include engagement from personnel policies committees at the local school district levels and did not have to be presented to the local school board. While educator and community voice were not included in the waiver process at the district level, AEA's leadership met with DESE to discuss the parameters of the waivers, and AEA members and community members raised significant concerns by contacting those state officials and the members of the State Board of Education directly prior to yesterday's board meeting. Safe openings of our schools should include a detailed plan outlining how those district plans will implement the Act 1240 waivers for the 2020-2021 school year. Some districts are already working on these plans through implementation of a Ready to Learn stakeholder committee. While the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education has provided guidance and said educator voice should be included, it's important to note that much of the decision-making lies with local districts. Each district must post their Ready to Learn plan on their district's website by September 1. Now is the time for all stakeholders, educators, parents, and community members to become involved and influence these reopening plans. The Arkansas School Boards Association, and Tony, who is with us tonight, he's the executive director, has already developed a resolution for the suspension of district policies in response to COVID-19's pandemic. This exemplifies the importance of educator engagement at the local level. Anyone wishing to shape the district plan should ask to be part of these committees. Educators, parents, and community members, they must remain vigilant as the process moves forward to ensure districts are listening. AEA stands ready to support our students and schools in this effort. Additionally, the National Education Association has put together an excellent resource, which Bill has referenced that there are resources available. This resource is called All Hands on Deck, Initial Guidance Regarding Reopening School Buildings. A copy is on the Public Policy Panel website. It provides several items educators may want to raise to school board members or administrators. It's also got great questions for the community. What's important to know about opening our schools, safely opening our schools, is that ultimately the decision on when to reopen should rely on medical experts. However, how we reopen should be based on the advice of educators. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. We appreciate that information. And for those listening in, If you have questions, remember that you can write them in the chat box or in the Q&A column at the bottom. And know that we're looking for you to get involved in your community just to make sure that this opening process involves all stakeholders. And now we'll continue the discussion with Tony, who is going to share information about an overview of the ADE plan.
Thank you. I think that was my task today, was to
Tony?
cover the Ready for Learning document. The document was published beginning of June. It was actually released on June the 4th. The Department of Education put together a webinar that many people attended. It's also posted on their website that you can see the webinar in entirety and also the document. I strongly encourage all of the audience members to pull that document down and look, because I'm going to give just a very brief overview. I will commend the Department of Education by getting out in front of this, the early release date on the document. The document is mostly about recommendations and guidance, and it is curtailed for any school in the state. Each district should look at that document and then come up with their own plan. A small rural district versus a large urban district may have different plans. One part of the state versus another part of the state, dependent upon the demographics within your student population. So many variables are there that it's really important that all districts take an in-depth look at all of the categories to determine what your plan is going to look like for reopening. And then also, once you reopen, what are the considerations? So once again, kudos to the department. Stacy McAdoo, I see on here, who is an ad hoc member of the state board. Congratulations for you and your work there also as you move forward with this document. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the document. It's posted on their website once again. It's been updated several times since its first release. It covers 6 main categories to consider in school reopening. Those are district operations and fiscal governance, which are basically going to be your operations of your school, and then where's the money flow? What does it look like? Facilities and transportation. We could talk for 4 hours about facilities and transportation. You know, how are kids going to be transported? Will masks be required? Are you going to run multiple routes? It's the same thing with facilities, about what types of procedures you're going to be using as a district for sanitizing. Will masks be required? Academics, one of the most important things. What are your academics going to look like? Your different modes of instruction. Human capital. You know, how are you going to utilize the resources of human capital? What's that going to look at like from district to district? It will vary greatly depending on your instructional methods that you're going to use. Are you going to do off-site, on-site, a hybrid model? So really taking into account how the personnel are going to be affected and utilized. Student support. No two students are the same. So many different needs of within the student body, different demographics, and that really needs to be considered within this plan. Stakeholder communication, family and community engagement is also a major piece within the 6 considerations. How is the school district going to communicate? How is the message going to be put out? How will you be involving stakeholders? All of this was released once again on June 4th to school leaders all over the state, superintendents, principals, and others, teachers, anyone that logged on to see this. And once again, anyone can go to the Department of Ed website to access this document and the webinar in entirety. One of the main ingredients that I would stress through this document at the very beginning, it talks about setting up a Ready for Learning committee. It's made up of education professionals, health professionals, business leaders, and stakeholders within the community. That should be a very diverse group of people with different perspectives that can point out different needs and different resources that are needed to meet the individual needs of students and staff and personnel within your district as the plan rolls out. As Carol mentioned earlier, the plan is to be submitted by September 1 to the Department of Education. I would hope that most districts, we know schools, many of them are going to start mid-August. I would hope that plans will be well underway, maybe submitted before that date. But I think to work out all the kinks, they've given a September 1 deadline. So that's the nuts and bolts of the plan. Once again, it's very comprehensive, it's very detailed, but it is full of choices for districts to make, dependent upon your needs and your resources that you have. And I would encourage the audience, once again, to look at that. If you want to know how to have engagement, reach out to your school officials, see if you have documents that are published on your local websites for your school district, and try to engage and try to find out as much information as possible through those resources.
Ms. Love, can I jump in here for a quick question?
Please do. Yes.
So this is
Yes.
for Carol and Tony. What I hear both of you saying is that a lot of the decisions about what school is going to look like in the fall are being pushed from the state to the local level, and that the local school districts can have a lot of local engagement if they choose to. And we've seen a lot of school districts where, frankly, I'm not sure how much local engagement there is. And so I'm wondering if you have any examples of places where you know that they are doing some good local engagement, and if you have advice for listeners on the call who might be in a district where that's not happening, how they might be able to get engaged in or prod their school district in that direction.
I can tell you, Bill, one district that just comes to mind is Bentonville. They have a daily communications piece that goes out. They have a website for question and answers that are regularly asked so that people can look at the website in case they do have a question. They don't have to just ask it. They can see if it's already been asked and what the answer is. So I know there's been a lot of engagement there. Some other districts that are out there that I've seen present that it seems like their plans are well underway and that they've had lots of stakeholder involvement. Possibly Star City might be one. And then also Lakeside School District in Garland County is another one.
And to go along with what Tony just said, Lake Hamilton School District has a Ready to Learn committee, as well as the Conway School District has also had a lot of work on their plan for the upcoming school year. And I know that Jacksonville North Pulaski has provided publicly some information. Whether or not they've been engaging with the educators in the communities, I don't know. But I think that the big thing is for individuals who have questions, reach out to the school board and the school administration and ask, where are you in the process? You have that right to be able to reach out to those individuals and to ask, and then to say, I'd like to be part of it, and then see if you can join the committee, because it is ultimately up to the individual school districts.
Thank you. Ms. Love, are you going to go to your next?
Thank you, Carol and Tony. And for those who are listening, no, not just yet. Just for our listeners, it is important to get involved. The kids are your kids. So make sure that you are finding out what's happening with your district that will impact your kids in the fall. And I know that sometimes going into the administrative office can be a daunting task. And even if you have to write a note and leave a note requesting that they call you back, make some contact and let them know that you are interested in being a part of the planning. With that said, Bill, were you wanting to jump in there?
No. I think I was making sure you were pitching back to you. So you're in good shape.
All right. Well, we're moving on. And now we have Ms. Wright, an engaged parent in the Marville area. Is Ms. Wright on?
Ms. Wright's not on. So if you could go on to Stacy first. And
Ms.
Ms. Wright.
McAdoo?
Yeah,
All right.
Ms. McAdoo.
Okay, so hello everyone. I am
And
excited.
now Ms. McAdoo is going to
I know there's a little delay here. That's
go
okay.
ahead.
That's okay. So I am Stacy McAdoo. I'm really excited to be here. I don't have a lot to open up with or share because a lot of what I was thinking has been stated. I will say a little bit about what districts are doing. in my district in the Little Rock area, they did do focus groups with teachers and with parents. So the work has started in the Little Rock area. But in regards to what I wanted to lead in with, I wanted to just kind of acknowledge that we are in unprecedented times that are both scary and exciting. I think for me, it's exciting because if we take advantage of the right now, we can see that we have an incredible opportunity to redesign and reimagine education. For months locally here in the Little Rock metro area, we've talked a lot about community schools, and I think now is an excellent opportunity to build that. I have personally spent the majority of my Teacher of the Year journey attending Student Voice Institutes and teacher leadership training. I think now is the perfect opportunity to truly listen to the two most valuable groups in the educational system, which are students and teachers. And I think that right now today, coronavirus and the protests that have erupted in every state and in many countries are evidence or have shown us what inequity looks like. And so teachers have always talked about the inequities in education, and we've always tried to address them. But I think now that the spotlight is on America and we see this, everyone is now able to see it. I think that it gives us the perfect opportunity to address institutional racism, inequities, all of those things, and just totally revamp, redo, make a new, brand new, better educational system for everybody. So it really is exciting, but it's also scary, but it can be exciting as well.
And so a big thank you to Bill and the Arkansas Public Policy Panel for putting on this forum so that we can share the information that people could possibly need to know and be able to get out there and get involved in their communities. I see that Ms. Wright has joined us, has she? Hi, Ms. Wright, a concerned parent from Marvel area, and we're going to hear from her.
Danielle, you're muted. There you go. Oh, we still can't hear you. Ms. Love, we seem to be having a technical problem with Danielle. She's not muted, but we can't hear her.
All right.
Danielle, if you can hear me, make sure that
while
your
we're fixing our
computer's not muted.
technology.
Here, Ms. Love, why don't we give Danielle a minute, and maybe Jessla and our staff can get in touch with her and help her figure that out. And can I go back and ask a question of Ms. McAdoo?
Yes.
I have to be disciplined to call her Miss McAdoo and not my buddy Stacy. One of the questions that I've heard a lot from community folks and that I have myself is that in the spring, with the sort of the lost half a semester, we saw some large equity gaps that were there before kind of widen back out even further. And so what should schools be doing, and what should community be asking for to make sure that those gaps are assessed fairly in a way that's accurate but not punitive towards the students or the teachers? And what can and should we be doing, while we're in the crisis now to help mitigate those gaps that have opened, if there is anything?
Okay, so that was a lot.
Yeah, sorry. If you could just solve that by the end of the call, we'd all appreciate it a lot.
I will say that and I can only speak for myself. Okay, so as an educator, the very first thing that I'm going to do when I get back in the classroom in the fall is make sure my students are okay. I think students are going to need a lot of support, not just academically, but they're going to need support, wraparound services to help them process everything that they have gone through. A lot of the students that I teach are some of the most vulnerable students. Their parents have been directly impacted by COVID, meaning they have lost their jobs, they have actually lost loved ones, family members. And so that is going to take an emotional toll on our students. So to get back in school in August and immediately think that we need to catch up academically, I don't think is necessarily the position to take. Secondly, you ask about these gaps. I think that any good educator would tell you that we always start school doing assessments to see where students are. So in many regards, it's not as though the teachers are having to think totally outside of the box, because we have never been able to start at day one without doing some type of assessment. So that will still happen. The third thing, I think education, if we truly embrace what education is supposed to be about, we always talk about meeting students where they are and how every student is different. There is no standardized student. If we truly believe that, then that's how we go into this year, and we meet students where they are. We give them what they need, which will look different from one student to another. And we just try to teach and love the whole child, and we take it one day at a time. I wish I had a better, well, actually, I don't think that there is a better answer. So I think that is my answer.
Carol or Tony, do you all want to add anything to that? I think that was a great answer.
Bill, I would say, the thing that is most concerning to me, I've had a life and, it's been dedicated to education, and nothing can replace the interaction between a teacher and a student. It is the most important piece of the learning process. Everything else is needed also. You've got to have principals, superintendents, you have to have clean facilities. There's so much there, but it breaks down in the crux. That's that interaction between a student and a teacher. And it's a learning connection. It's an emotional connection. Some kids come to school and the best thing they get all day was a hug from the teacher. And we're in different times now. It's going to be very, very tough for teachers. I've got lots of friends who are currently in the classroom, and they are worried to the core about their kids, just kind of echoing what Stacey is saying, because they know these kids need that human touch, that interaction, and they're hurting. We're in challenging times. We haven't been able to solve all of the issues with disparity gaps, having kids physically in school. So now we have the added challenge of what are we going to do with this longer absence if we're physically able to come back. But even then beyond that, if districts go to off-site instruction, what does that look like? What does that student-teacher interaction look like? And I worry about those kids who are the have-nots already, who have some disadvantages, making sure that they have the resources. And I think that's one of the key elements that school districts are really going to have to look at. I mean, if it requires internet services, how are you going to provide that? If it requires technology, how are you going to provide that? If students need more of that, if they've been in smaller classrooms and they've had one-on-one interaction or 1-to-8 interaction, what's that going to look like? And how is that going to be monitored and assessed? Teachers have a huge challenge in front of them as we go into this. And we don't just see the end result and we're working toward that. That goalpost changes daily with CDC guidelines, with the state of the coronavirus, with differences in waivers and regulations from the federal and state level. So, I mean, it's full of fluidity, and teachers are really going through a lot right now. The same with principals, superintendents, and others, school board members. It's going to take everyone on the same page. It's going to take communication. It's going to take working together with parents to try to meet the needs. There's not, as Stacey was saying, there's not a silver bullet for this. It's going to take a lot of work and a lot of people working together thinking about all kids and kids individually to get through this time.
Great.
And I want to add to that, because as a special educator, I bring and I'm also a parent of a special needs individual. So I know that our parents of our special needs children, they are having a very difficult time with this. There's so much uncertainty. And then for our children, there's so much uncertainty because so many of our children, they have to have that schedule. They are regimented. And for our specialists, and as a speech language pathologist, I know how important it is to have that face-to-face interaction with my students. As an occupational therapist or a physical therapist, to be able to actually help the student form their hand to be able to do their writing. And through virtual interaction, you cannot have that hand over hand instruction for the children. And so I know that there's a lot of concern regarding how are we going to meet the needs of the IEPs for our children? How are we going to meet those accommodations for the 504 plans for our children? Those are very unique challenges that we're being faced with right now as a result of this pandemic. And whether it's virtual or it's in-person instruction, as Stacy was saying, educators, we always assess to find out where our students are when they come back to school, and particularly for those who receive specialized services, we have to see what the regression and the retention rate is for those students over the course of the summer or during the course of the year when we have a break for Thanksgiving or the winter break or the spring break. Did the students lose those skills that had been instructed? Are they going to need to have extended year services? And that's completely separate from summer school. And so, you know, are we going to have to provide those services for the children because they have lost those skills, and we're going to have to make adjustments to their IEPs and to the service delivery to make sure that their needs are effectively being met and that they are able to access the curriculum? Those are important things for our children, and we have to consider that as well.
That's fantastic. Thank you for those answers. Ms. Love, I see that we have Ms. Wright back with us, so we might pitch to her in just a moment, but let me take care of one housekeeping thing. We have over 250 of you participating tonight in this webinar, so we really appreciate all of you. If you are on the Zoom, you can leave questions in either the question and answer thread there or in the chat box. We'll see the question and answer thread faster. We're just going to let those questions queue up for a minute while we finish going through an initial part of this conversation, but I promise we are going to come back to those questions and turn this into more interactive with some of your all's input. But keep asking them or making your comments in those threads. And then if you're watching on Facebook, you can also leave your questions or comments in the comment thread on Facebook, and our staff, through the magic of something I don't understand, are going to somehow get those Facebook questions and comments over to us. So that's just the housekeeping stuff. 250 folks, this is clearly an issue we're all thinking about, and so I appreciate all of you being here. Ms. Love, do you want to queue us up for?
Yes, and so now we're going to go to Ms. Wright, who is a concerned parent and an involved parent in the Marble area. Ms. Wright?
You're muted still. Oh, unmuted? You're unmuted for what? Hi, say something now. No, we still can't hear you, Ms. Wright. Drama.
Miss Wright, you might try calling in using your cell phone number, and I can promote you, so we'll hear your voice.
Sorry for the technical problems.
All right, while we're getting Ms. Wright queued in again, I'd like to go back to something that Stacy said, and I think all three of our panelists have mentioned this, that psychological process that all of us, not just the kids, the teachers, all of the workers in our school district need that psychological coaching and nurturing and comforting through this time period, because we've all been impacted. And I know that there's still a lot of fears out there. And so one of the suggestions that came from our education caucus group was to have every employee and every child go through at least one counseling process. And then after that, on an as needed basis, because everybody's going to have some issues that they're going to have to adjust to and deal with. And finding the kind of personnel that will allow people to feel comfortable to share their concerns so that they can get addressed in a way that makes good sense and allows for good working process in our classrooms. With that, have we gotten Ms. Wright in yet? I'm sorry, Stacy, go ahead.
Well, no, I was just going to say, I love that idea, that suggestion, because basically what you're doing there is providing an assessment. You're doing a needs assessment on the front end so that the system, the school district, the school, the teachers know how to adequately teach those individuals, or provide information or services for their staff.
Right.
And so to go along with that, Ms. Love, I am part of a cadre of educators nationwide with the National Education Association, and we are working on a grief and trauma resource because, and we're calling ourselves the Compassion Crew.
Wow.
We know that when we do have our schools reopening and we're back in session, that we're going to have not only students who are suffering from grief and trauma, but as well as our educators are going to be suffering from grief and trauma. So, you know, Senator Joyce Elliott and then Marcia Harding, who used to be the Director of Special Education for the Department of Ed, they have always pushed for increased mental health services for our students. And that is something that I think that we are going to see an increase in mental health services for our students. But I think we're also going to see it for our educators. I believe that both students and educators are going to need to have those services in moving forward.
One question that I have.
And removing the stigma of someone going for counseling.
Yes.
That was all, Bill.
Okay, well, no, that's great. I think that's a super important point. And so it leads me to a question, which is are school districts going to have the resources that they need to provide the services that our students and faculty are going to need as we come back, and to do the social distancing that we need? It seems like class sizes might need to get a little bit smaller to do the social distancing. It seems like some of this grief counseling and general assessment and just sort of mental health support, even if it's not directly counseling, is going to take capacity. And so I'm wondering if that capacity is there, or if the funding to build that capacity is in the stimulus package that schools are able to access, or where's this capacity going to come from? Is this something we should be advocating to get more of?
I don't know the answer to that, Bill, but if we don't ask, we know we won't get. Right. So we do have to ask, because we know that it's vital and necessary.
So I thought Tony was going to jump in on that one.
That's what I was waiting on.
We're all waiting on you, Tony.
I was looking at questions when he asked it, but I'm ready now.
No, but I do agree, though, Bill. I do believe that the money is there with the CARES Act, but with Tony being with the Arkansas State School Boards Association, he probably has a better grasp on that. And so
Tony, the question was, you're muted, Tony. And the question was, do schools have the resources that they need to reopen safely and to address the needs of students? So we were talking about counseling and the counseling needs of students, and that is going to take a capacity. But I think if you look across the rest of the system of lowering class sizes to do the social distancing or whatever other supports, are the resources there that schools need?
Well, That's an easy question, Bill. I don't know that I've ever talked to an educator at any level to where they said, boy, if there are some more resources I would love to have that could make this better. And that's from the superintendent to the teacher's aide in a classroom. So, you know, it's dependent on so much. There has been, as Carol referred to, there's some CARES Act funding that is available for schools to be able to utilize. I think that one thing that's a big piece in this that we have to remember, that we do have an education system that is supposed to be free and appropriate to all students. So I think districts, especially at this time, we all know of those situations where kids are asked to bring certain types of things to school. But kids just have to have themselves present, either virtually or physically. So it's incumbent upon the school district to provide resources that are needed at the very end to make sure that kids are safe and that instruction takes place. Now, I think it's going to be individually by district. The needs, once again, across the state are going to vary from urban to rural to different sections of the state. A lot of it's going to be dependent upon the protocols that are in place and the types of instruction that are going to take place. Each of them require different types of resources. So I think that it's important that communication and engagement is evident during this time for people to voice what the needs are as far as resources, and also financially what those may need to be.
So what I hear you saying is that the CARES Act stimulus money that schools got, that there's a wide swath of things that districts can choose. So again, this is going back to local decision making and the need, if those of us that have views on how that money should be spent or prioritized, we need to be engaged with the school district to make sure that they're hearing that.
Exactly. Let me give you one example, Bill. When I say that, you know, that's why it's hard to pin down a specific answer. I spoke to one district leader that is purchasing internet services for all kids that do not have it. Well, this is a somewhat suburban district. A cable company has provided a huge discount for any families that do not have it. The school is purchasing that at a greatly reduced price. So that is wonderful for that school district, and that's needed resources, but it may be minimal, where there may be another district that doesn't have that resource available. So how does that district then assure that kids have internet service if internet service is required? That district may have greater needs than a district. Or let's say there is no internet service and satellite is the best that you can do. What is the cost of that to get internet? And is it going to be fast enough? Is it going to be good enough to provide what the kids are needing? That's just one example of difference in resources and resource allocation on one specific topic.
Yeah, that's great. So local engagement.
So let's encourage everybody to get involved and ask some questions of your local school districts. Do we have Ms. Wright available yet?
They're trying, Miss Love. We have a lot of questions in the queue. If you'd like, I could take a few of those out of the queue and ask them, and we can see where that takes us until Ms. Wright gets connected. Speaking of internet,
Wonderful.
speaking of internet problems, we're having some of our own right here is a case study. I don't think we've had one of these webinars yet where we haven't had at least one participant somewhere in Arkansas have severe connection problems. So our state has a long ways to go on that front. And so here's a question: is the one school district in Siloam Springs is offering a virtual option for 2021, but they're limiting that option to just 150 students. And they're saying that that's just because of financial reasons. And so the question is are they able to do that, to limit the number, and or should they be required to offer that to anybody who wants it in their school district under the state's adequacy and equity laws? Don't all jump at once.
And I always wait because I was thinking that was a Tony question, but I do have an opinion on this. I think ultimately the part of what just happened with approving of the waivers for the state is it is all about what local districts do. So if that's what the local district decides that they're going to do, the State Department only provides recommendations. The districts themselves are the ones who come up with their plan and execute it, which kind of goes into that. There was another question that asked, how do parents get involved? And so like we keep saying teachers and parents need to get involved, but we're not really showing them or telling them how. And until they know how to voice what they need to say and who to go to express these concerns, we're just going to continue to have all of these inequities and misuse of policies and all kinds of stuff.
So Stacy, earlier I had mentioned that what individuals need to do is contact their school administration, which means, you have contact forms to be able to reach out to your superintendents. Parents of special ed children, they know exactly how to reach the director of special ed services or the division of exceptional children. They know how to reach those individuals, and all it takes is a phone call and an email. And so that's what individuals need to do. They need to pick up the phone. They need to make those, they need to write those emails. They need to send them to the district administrators. They need to send it to the school board members, and they need to ask these questions. That's what individuals did as the Act 1240 waivers were getting ready to have the full approval just yesterday. Individuals sent those emails. They made the phone calls, and it made an impact because there were a lot of questions that were being asked. I mean, Stacy, you sat there yesterday for quite a few hours as questions were being asked about these waivers. And so that's what it's going to take. People need to pick up the phone, and they need to open up their tablets or their phones or their computers, and they need to start sending emails.
One resource that we have that might be helpful is, again, this is on our website, which is arpanel.org, is we made a list of questions that you might want to ask your local school officials about their COVID response in terms of, do they have a stakeholder group and when is it meeting? And there you go. Thank you, Carol, for holding it up. It has questions like, is there a stakeholder group? How are they spending their stimulus money? What are their plans around social distancing and other questions like that? It's certainly not the end all be all. And if you all see that and you have feedback on what other questions you think should be on there, it's an evolving document. Ms. Love, I might move on to the next question. I don't know, Ms. Love, if you can see the questions, if you want to help ask the ones here that you want to list. Okay, great. I'll let you go.
I can't see them, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, then I'll keep moving on a little bit with those until we get Danielle back.
Yes.
One question that is, what are schools going to do when they have a positive test from a student or a teacher as we reopen? It seems inevitable that that's going to happen. So what's the playbook going to look like when a student or a teacher tests positive in one of our schools that's open?
I was
Carol,
waiting.
you're dying to jump in, so please do.
No, I was waiting for Tony. I keep looking for his microphone to click off. I know that it's going to become like a broken record, and there are probably people on this call that don't even know what a record is. So I know I'm dating myself by saying a broken record, but it's going to be, it's going to be the same answer. It's going to depend on the school district and what that district has determined that they are going to do. We know that Most districts, because we have seen it happen in Pulaski County Special School District, we've seen it in North Little Rock, and we see it currently in Nashville schools. The first thing that they do is they send out notification to the community to let them know that there's been a positive test. What they do beyond that, that's going to depend on what the plan is in place for that individual school district. Tony?
Well, most districts are going to be following the Arkansas Department of Health guidelines. They have a flow chart that shows what happens when a student shows up with symptoms. There's specific recommendations that follow through that. What happens when a student tests positive? What happens when a teacher tests positive? Each district plan will vary to some degree, but most of the district plans that I'm seeing, they're trying to follow CDC and ADH, Arkansas Department of Health guidelines for those. And who knows where we're going to be when school starts. You know, it's, you know, Carol mentioned the Nashville incident, you know, where a group of educators were all infected, it seems to be during a meeting that took place. What if that had been the first week of school? What would they have done? Very, very difficult questions. And that goes back, Bill, as I was looking through here, and I'm going to quit looking at questions. I'm going to pay more attention. Because see, like everybody's looking to me to answer some of this. One of the questions there that goes right along with this is, what is social distancing going to look like in my school? You know, and that's kind of ties in with what happens, you know, when someone tests positive or shows symptoms. What is social distancing going to look like? That's, once again, you know, we keep saying, Carol said it, the broken record. But, you know, right now I know that some school districts have been criticized because they're sending out surveys saying, would you rather have off-site or on-site? But yet parents don't know the particulars. The school districts are grasping to a large degree right now. They're trying to find out how many kids will come back to school, because that will make a big difference on what instruction looks like. For instance, if you've got a school of 500 students and 450 parents signify that they are going to have their kids, or 450 kids are returning to school, that looks a lot different than if that 500 population school, that if 400 say, we're going to keep our kids at home. Social distancing in a 500 population school looks a lot different with 100 kids versus 450. You don't have near as much leniency to be able to do that. So schools, to a large degree, they're going to have to determine how many kids are coming back in putting together those social distance protocols. They can all talk about, you know, what, you know, in group gatherings, you're going to wear a mask, what will happen in the classrooms. But that social distancing issue is going to be dependent upon the facilities and the capacity and how many kids are there. And the same thing in line with, I saw lots of questions that are coming up about flexibility. Will I have to choose by semester? Will I be able to choose day by day? Once again, teachers are going to be under a big strain day by day, looking at how many kids do I have physically present today? You know, and even if they can't choose the semester, some parents will take the initiative and they will pull their students from school regardless. They feel like their child is in, you know, dangers. Their health is in danger. So it's going to be lots of change. The Department of Education has used the word pivot, that you've got to be able to pivot quickly. And that's what the school system is going to have. They're going to have to be able to react, have plans in place, A, B, C, D, E, F, all the way through for whatever the situation may turn to on any given day. One day you're sitting there and you have no COVID positives in your school, and then the next day you may have 3 or 4 educators on a campus. What is a district going to do? What is a school going to do in those situations? Once again, it's an individual decision, but I expect that we will see more and more guidance coming from the state as time draws near on this.
Yeah. Another question that
And for the person asking that question, it is really important now that you get involved and get on the committee, ask about the committee, because districts are making those decisions right now, and you could impact how that decision is made in your district.
Ms. Love,
and sometimes getting a group.
Oh no, please keep going.
Sometimes just getting 1 or 2 parents to go with you, or one or two parents, and a memo or an email, and have a couple of people signing off on it versus just the one person, gets a different kind of response than if they just know that it's just one person. So there are ways to have your district administrators listen to you.
Absolutely, that's critical.
Yes, sir, Bill.
I was going to tell you, I think Miss Wright is back. We might try that one more time. And we're up to almost 300 participants, and we have 30 questions in the queue. So we got a lot of engagement here to have, which is fantastic. But I think we have Miss Wright back. Try it one more time.
Ms. Wright, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. I was having a
Danielle?
conversation. Yes, ma'am. Can you hear me?
Oh,
Hello?
yes, we can.
Okay. Yes. What y'all was saying?
Yes.
Hello?
It's your turn to tell us about your concerns in your district, or just share with the panel.
Okay. Okay. So, I mean, are we strictly talking about education as far as the kids going back to school, or just this whole COVID thing in general?
As it relates to education and going
Wherever
back.
you want to.
Okay. Well, my main focus and concern is, you know, with this technology stuff. You know, I only been out of school for 9 years, and we didn't have all these iPads and all this technology stuff. We was out in portable buildings where we had to do stuff by hand. My only thing is, the kids staying at home, not getting that classroom hands-on learning, and this technology handicapping our kids, because, you know, what if all of a sudden, now that the COVID-19 is big focus on the world, so what if technology, you know, all of a sudden be a big downfall where nothing works, and, you know, everybody is so equipped with technology and not doing stuff manually with their hands. And, you know, I'm against all of this technology stuff, working from home and not being there in the classroom. And if it was my decision, for like school-wise, I'm going to send my child to school, because I want him to be able to get the technology learning or whatever, but also the hands-on stuff, because I wasn't brought up like that. And I can use, you know, computers. I'm not real good at it, but I'm also good at using my hands and, you know, working things out manually. And as far as with this COVID stuff, I know a lot of y'all probably gonna get mad at me, and a lot of people gets mad at me when I speak about it, but I honestly don't believe in it, and they throwing it out of proportion, because I remember when it first started, you know, they were saying that they didn't have enough money to test people, and when you get sick, don't come to get tested if you're not having symptoms. Okay, that was the case. Now on down the line, now all of a sudden we got money to afford tests for free testing, and now all of a sudden every time somebody dies, it's the coronavirus. And I won't believe it until I see it. This is what this person died from, and this is coronavirus. And, you know, I'm not a scientific person, but you will have to show me that this is what coronavirus is, and this is what this person died from. The person from Marvel, this lady had cancer.
Did we lose Ms. Wright?
I think we might have.
Looks like it. So let me try to piggyback on that a little bit. I mean, Tony, you were saying that. I mean, I think Ms. Wright, when you were off the line, we were talking about there's basically nothing's going to replace being in the classroom with a teacher. I mean, that's what all the data shows. All the online learning options have fallen short. And so one question that I think stems from that is, what did we learn from having to move online in the spring that we can apply to any online learning that we might need to do this coming school year? Did we learn anything that can help us improve that?
I would say definitely, Bill. I mean, you know, we went from AMI, which is alternative methods of instruction, and it varied from district to district. Some districts had take-home stuff, you know, that kids would take home for up to 10 days and work on. Other districts had more extensive plans, but a lot of districts are talking about, and schools are talking about the gaps and ways to improve, how interaction can be improved, how assessments can be improved, how accountability, you know, on the part of students can be improved. So I think there was some learning, but there wasn't a lot of time and opportunity to be able to adapt. So I'm hopeful that it will be better in the fall if we get back to this. But just one thing I would say in echoing Miss Wright, I can feel her pain a little bit. It's somewhat unnerving when I have to hand my phone to an 8-year-old to fix an app that I can't do myself. So I'm sure that your kids, Bill, are better at fixing your phone and your technology than you are.
Oh my Lord, yes.
The next generation is so much more adept and not scared of technology, it seems like. But it's tougher for us of older generations.
And can I jump in there for a second? I had a couple of things that I wanted to say, which aren't necessarily in response to Ms. Wright. They're just kind of some thoughts that I had previously that I was waiting on an opportunity to share. I think that if we can get back to figuring out what the purpose of education is all about, like why are we sending children to school? Why does education exist? Then I think that will help us to figure out how to move forward. Are we viewing education as a place for childcare to take care of children, or are we trying to have an institution that prepares them for a future that is unknown, that we don't even know exists? And if it is the latter, then how can we use what we have to move forward in that direction? Which means not necessarily that the way we did instruction when stuff shut down with AMI. It's really not about the technology that we have or the instruction. It's about how we are utilizing what we have and how we make the best out of that. So that means that when we are using technology, it doesn't necessarily have to not be hands-on things that students are doing. It is a matter of them using the technology maybe to upload evidence of the things that we have taught them or had them do outside of technology. So technology is not the be-all, end-all thing. And as a teacher, I do need to say this part in regards to physically taking students and teachers back into these buildings. I don't know what everyone's building looks like across the United States. I do know what the majority of the buildings that I have been in the state of Arkansas look like. We have a lot of old buildings that have poor ventilation systems that need a lot of work, right? So in theory, what you're asking people to do is put the most valuable resources that our state, our nation has, which are the children, in a physical place with other valuable children in a classroom with a lot of people who may be some of your most vulnerable people because they are going to be older individuals, and you're asking them to stay in this box with lots of different children, lots of different people, poor ventilation, poor all of this other stuff for 6.5 to 7 hours a day. And we really just need to figure out why do we want education? What is the purpose of education? And how can we get there in the most efficient, best way that protects the lives of all children and all educators that have to be a part of this system?
Those are some big thoughts that
Good
we
point.
have, for sure. I think one of the big questions is how do we think about rebuilding the system that you're talking about, Stacey, and at the same time prepare for 6 weeks from now. And I think that's what a lot of parents and teachers are struggling with, is how to juggle both of those things.
And I don't want to just keep jumping and dominating the thing, but I heard Carol very loud and clear where, and I don't know if she said it here or maybe I'll follow her on Facebook and, you know, and all of this too. But one of the things that she has always said is that we cannot wait until we are asked to be a part of this conversation. So if we have concerns, if we have solutions, we have to document them and we have to share them, and we have to do it now, because if we're waiting on our local districts to come to us and show us a plan, then that already means that we're not involved in that plan. So if they're not asking you, and this is to everybody that's watching or listening or whatever, if no one has asked you to be a part of the conversation, bring your whole self to the conversation anyway and say, look, I am a part of this community. These are my needs. We have less than 40 something days before school is supposed to start.
Right.
We can't, it is urgent.
Yes.
This is urgent.
So Stacy, thank you for saying that, because I always say, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. And so you have got to have a seat at the table. You've got to raise your voice. You've got to ensure that you are part of that conversation. That's the only way that you're going to be heard. You know, you always have heard that the squeaky wheel gets the oil. Well, we need to start squeaking. We need to make sure that we are there and we are letting them know what our concerns are and that we have ideas. We can't go in there and just say, well, what are you going to do? You have to come forth with some ideas yourselves. And there are great questions that are being asked tonight. There are questions that we have been hearing for weeks. We know there's going to be new questions tomorrow. Next week, there's going to be a different set of questions. This is a very fluid situation. It changes from moment to moment. Just when you think you have figured it out, something changes, and then you have to rethink it. But the only way that you're going to be part of the solution is to actually be there and having your voice heard. It can't be just one. This is where you got it, Stacy. You can't expect someone else to be your voice. You have to be your own voice. And it's going to take all of us together, because one voice becomes two. And then that voice that may have started out as a whisper, it becomes the sound of a voice in a room. And then it becomes louder. And then it becomes a roar. And once it's a roar, that's when you're going to make change. That's when you're going to make an impact.
Right. Spoken.
Ditto.
Another question, we got several questions here that are about the parents being asked now to make decisions about online or in-person learning come the fall before the schools have their plan. So this one question summarizes several, which is, if the school districts aren't supposed to have their plans into the state until September 1st, school starts in theory somewhere around August 15th. And a lot of parents are being asked to make a decision now between virtual or in-person school. How are parents supposed to make the decision? And then what are the implications of that, both on students learning and then also on the professionals in the schools? I just summarized 3 or 4 or 5 questions into one, so I may have packed it a little.
I'll take a stab at that, Bill. Well, the first thing I would say to the people who are asking the question is, try to ascertain, are they asking you to make a commitment now for the beginning of school, and you may very well so be, or is it simply a survey to say, at this moment? I know that several districts right now have surveys out that are asking, if you had the choice, what would it be? And then based upon that survey, they will then come up with instructional models, and then parents will be able to choose at a later date. That would be my hope on most of that. They would be able to choose at a later date which model they're looking at. It would be very difficult as a parent to determine, is my kid going to be on-site or off-site, if I did not know what that looked like. So my hope would be that if they are being asked that question, that they have an idea of what off-site learning, what's that going to look like, and what is on-site learning going to look like. And if they don't have that and they're being asked to make that decision now, once again, I'll echo some of my fellow panelists. You need to be asking questions. So what does this mean? What is off-site? Who's the provider? What responsibilities will I have? How will my child be assessed? You need to be asking those questions to be able to make an intelligent answer.
And I'm going to jump in here one more time, and I promise I'm going to try to contain myself.
We didn't ask you on here to be quiet, so we're glad you're speaking up, please.
All right. So this, again, is not the politically correct answer. Here's my philosophy as a human being, as a mother, okay? If districts are now, if they have now been granted a waiver to change their plan after they submit it without having to talk to anybody, based on things that are changing in the system, as a parent, there is absolutely no way anyone would be able to tell me that I could not change the course of direction that was needed for my child. That's me as an individual parent. There's no way. So if districts can have that right to make the necessary changes as they deem fit, parents should have that right as well.
Yeah. Carol, there's a lot of questions.
And some districts.
Oh, please, Ms. Love.
Some districts are asking for parents to decide one or the other, or a combination of the two. So reserving a seat in both places.
Yeah.
Yes, Bill.
I'm trying to read through the questions on the queue, Ms. Love, so please jump in anytime and take me a different direction. But Carol, I see a lot of questions about concerns about teachers not being properly protected as we go back, about teachers not having the rights that they need, not having the planning time that they need, being overtaxed, et cetera. And you sort of started off talking about the waivers and a little bit of this, but do you want to, again, there's a lot of questions about that, and I'm not sure we're gonna have time to hit each one individually, but do you just want to speak to that kind of broad bucket?
Certainly. So, yesterday, the State Board of Education approved all of the waivers, which includes duty-free lunch, instructional time, class size. They approved waiving or non-instructional duties. It's a long list of waivers, and those are available on the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education's website, so you can see all of the waivers that your school district has applied for. However, the thing about those waivers is that even though all of those waivers have been approved for 260 of the 263 school districts, those school districts still have to submit a plan. And that's why we keep talking about the Ready for Learning Stakeholder Committee, because it's that committee that will make the plan for those individual school districts. Because if they are going to waive the class size, then they have, like if you have the students in person and then you also are doing the students online, then the school district has to submit a plan stating why they need to implement that waiver and what it's going to do for their school district. They also, with the non-instructional duty and with the duty-free lunch, again, the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, they have parameters and guidelines that they have set forth regarding that, such as if you are on site at the school, but yet you are providing virtual instruction, then you are still entitled to your duty-free lunch. But if you are at home providing the instruction, then they don't have to ensure that you have that duty-free lunch. And then they also said that you cannot replicate a traditional school day when you are providing virtual instruction. And so then that comes to the point of the planning time. But yet AEA has raised the concerns regarding this. And Stacy, on some meetings that I have participated in, I believe her words or her word was dangerous. That this could prove to be dangerous to have these waivers, particularly for those issues. AEA has been providing resources for our members. We have a whole page on COVID-19 and resources that are available. We actually have a group of educators that are looking to see what we can do in providing some other feedback and guidance for our members. But again, there is guidance from the department regarding this, but then each of those individual school districts will determine how they will implement those waivers and how Nashville does their waivers versus Gurdon or El Paso, Arkansas, or Beebe versus Texarkana, or Bentonville versus Huntsville. Everyone's going to have a different way that they are implementing these waivers. And so what works for one is not going to work for another. And I know that's not the best answer, but unfortunately, that's the answer for today. And, you know, again, we have raised these questions. We wrote a letter to Secretary Key and to all of the state board members. Stacy got the letter, and we addressed every one of those issues, and we asked for them to please discuss these with us. And we even met with the department to go over these issues. And the response was, well, that may not have been the intent. And then our response to, well, that may not have been the intent is that if that's not the intent, then words matter, and you need to ensure that the words that are written reflect your intent.
Very good.
Carol, can I get some clarity?
Yes, ma'am.
I understand that the traditional classroom teacher would have a planning time and perhaps a duty-free lunch. So I get that. For the online instructor, tell me what that day looks like for them. What did you just say about?
So what I said was that the waiver, and it's 8 pages of waivers. It's available on the department's website. But the duty-free lunch, let me just pull that up. That is Arkansas Annotated Code 617-111. And what they have said is that districts are not required to provide a 30-minute duty-free lunch to licensed employees providing instruction virtually from an off-site location or performing other duties as directed away from the school premises. And then it goes on to say, when necessary to implement the ADH, Arkansas Department of Health requirements or guidelines, nor to compensate those employees for not receiving a duty-free lunch. So it depends on where you are physically when you are providing the instruction. You could be providing virtual instruction from your school, and they will ensure that you have a duty-free lunch because you're at school.
Okay.
Most schools have cameras. They can make sure that you get your 30-minute duty-free lunch. If you're at home, they can't see what's going on in your home. And so they can't ensure that you have that 30-minute duty-free lunch. I know that's not an answer that somebody wants to hear. I don't like saying that, believe me, but that is the guidance that has been provided, and then it will determine, or it will be determined based on the plan that is implemented as to how your school district will move forward with that, if they will even use that waiver. Just because these waivers have been proposed does not mean that they have to use all of these waivers. The plans that are supposed to be posted to your school district website by September 1st have to list which waivers you are picking and choosing. It's like going through the buffet. If you don't want Brussels sprouts and you want asparagus, then you pick asparagus. So if you don't want to waive the duty-free lunch, then you waive the planning.
I was doing one or the other so that I could keep a stable connection.
Here we go. Thanks for that. Another question that I think I've heard a lot and see a lot in the thread, which is we're coming up also on cold and flu season. So what's the procedure going to be for schools to manage students who get sick at school? What are they going to do with students who have someone at home who's sick? What are they going to, just how is all that going to be managed? It looks like it could be a recipe for chaos.
One thing that I found interesting when I was listening to Carol speak a few minutes ago, she was reading, or I'm getting all my stuff mixed up now. At some point there was a discussion or a question, maybe it was in the Q&A, that asked about the Arkansas Department of Health's advice recommendations versus the CDC recommendations. And, you know, like 6 feet of social distance versus 3 feet, having kids help you clean in between classes versus one entity says that children are not to help you clean during in between classes or during classes, that children are not even supposed to be around when the chemicals are being used. So this is still what, you know, what we have just been saying the whole time we're here. All of these are local decisions. And I don't know. I know what it looks like for me in my classroom. I know that even before COVID hit the news last year in the district that I am a part of, the Little Rock School District, we had several schools that flu, is what they said, it was the flu, went through, and elementary schools had to like close down because there were so many kids who had the flu. And now I'm not convinced that it was the flu. I really think it was probably coronavirus before we knew coronavirus was coronavirus. So I don't know. And I wonder, even in one of the reports, it may have been, I don't know, I've looked at so many, but somewhere they were telling us that the school districts were going to provide the equipment to clean and all of that. Where are they getting this from? Like, I can't, when I go to the store right now to try to get hand sanitizer and wipes for me as an individual, it's difficult. So there are a lot of questions, y'all, a lot of questions.
So yeah, even just supply chain questions. Like, even if you have all the money in the world, can you buy the material? Tony, do you have anything to add on that? I mean, I've heard some people calling for a delay to the start of the school year so that schools can get these plans in place better. I don't know if that's a realistic ask, but I've heard some discussion about that. But how are districts managing, making sure they have the supply chains and trying to get ready? And someone said earlier, we're only about 40 days away from the start of school.
Well, first of all, as echoing Stacy, it's going to be individual decisions. The questions that are being asked now, the answer today may not be the correct answer a month from now or 2 months from now. So it's hard to give answers to so many of those questions. It may be that come flu season, who would have thought that the month of April and May, no students in Arkansas would be in public schools? That may be the same situation that we're in. I don't want to be the voice of doom. I don't know, but it could very well be that we have statewide closure because of escalating cases, and that's a moot question at that point for schools. As far as resources, I know that there are lots of vendors out there that are targeting schools as a priority. So where you may not be able to get it off of your local shelves, schools through their cooperatives and through school districts are being, I think it is easier at this point for them to get the resources than it may be even for individuals. I know that there are cooperative purchasing programs and others that are out there to where they have been inundated. Bill, you run a local nonprofit. I don't know how it's been for you, but for me, I get solicited sometimes 2 and 3 times a day by vendors saying, here are my wipes, here are my machines, would you like to purchase? So I think it may be different for schools as more so than for individuals as far as being able to get that. I'm not in a school system anymore though, so I can't give you a definitive answer.
I think they know we don't have any money, so I'm not getting those solicitations, Tony.
And I promise I'm not trying to be the doomsday person either. I just find that really interesting that before coronavirus, I didn't necessarily have the supplies that I needed in my classroom as it related to tissue and wipes and all of that. So to think that production is up and it's going to be readily available now, I think is very optimistic, especially to provide it at the quantity that I would need if you're not lowering my classroom size and I have to use those supplies more frequently than I had to use them before. I think that's very, very optimistic.
And I think we even had this conversation yesterday about that. Typically the first day of school, all of the teachers, they have their school supply list for the students. And so, you see everyone at the store with their list, and everyone always has hand sanitizer, paper towels, tissues. They have everything on their list. Well, now we know if you go into a store, you're limited to only one. And you're lucky if you can even find it. I mean, I think I've struck gold anytime I see any hand sanitizer or any wipes, and I quickly put it in my basket. But, when we raised this question with the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, the response was that the school districts, and as Tony has said that, he's getting a lot of vendors that are contacting him, the school districts can use the CARES Act money to purchase these supplies. And so that's something that, again, we have to advocate for that they are using those monies. And Bill, I believe that you have a link on your page that shows how much money from the CARES Act, from the federal money, is being given to each individual school district in the state of Arkansas. So the resources are there. As Stacy was saying, we need to make sure that people know how to make those calls, how to find the information that's available for them. And so I appreciate the fact that that we have that information on your website, as well as we have it on the AEAonline.org website. And so you can get these resources and you can see what monies your particular school district is getting, and ask, how are you using that money? Are you using it for more staff to come in to do the cleaning? Are you using it for personal protective equipment? Because we know that staff and students want the masks. There's all sorts of rumors floating around that, this district's going to provide 3 masks per student, or they're going to give 1 mask per staff. So there's all these what ifs, all these suppositions out there. But the only way that you're going to know for sure is if you ask the questions and you go to the source to get the question. And that's how you're going to know how that money is going to be spent. But the only way you know how much money is coming into your school district is if you go to that website and you see it. It's on the ADE website, arkansased.gov, and you can find out how much stimulus monies are coming into the state. And then they have a PDF for each individual school district.
Bill, one of the questions that I'm seeing that a caller is sending has to do with social distancing. And since social distancing is one of the issues in terms of the safety issue, one of the benchmarks is teaching social skills. So how will the state or districts handle teaching the socialization skills that kids should be getting in a learning environment, yet they're required to do social distancing?
So Alice, that
Carol,
yes.
Tony?
No, so Alice, that's a very good question. And as a speech language pathologist, one of the things that that we work on is pragmatics, social interactions. So I get how important it is to have that social interaction. And I can tell you, I am desperately missing it because I am a speech language pathologist and I thrive on that. You know, we always have our classroom rules. And so with the social distancing, that's now going to be added, I would imagine. Stacy, correct me if I'm wrong, since you're also an educator in the classroom still. I think that's going to have to become part of those classroom rules and the rules of the school culture that you have. And that's where it's going to have to be taught, is that it's going to have to become part of the school environment, community environment culture.
And let me just say this, in my classroom, as it stands right now, if I return to school in August and I have a full class of 25 students, we cannot social distance. We will not be, my classroom is not physically large enough for us to have not even 3 feet of space distance away from each other. My classroom, as it stands right now, I can't even open windows to get air from outside, enough air from outside to circulate. So there will not be any social distancing occurring in my classroom. It will not be possible unless they cut my class size and I do not have, a full class. And maybe they take out the desk and we sit on the floor. That might be able to give us 3 feet of social distancing.
But still not 6.
No, I cannot get 6.
Yeah. Another question related to that, Ms. Love, that I've seen is for students who have been in the doing virtual learning and who may choose that again in the fall, or if we end up needing to close schools again. One of the things they've really missed is the social and emotional development that's such a critical part of school. And what can we do to foster social and emotional development better for students who are in a virtual setting, or even for students who are in a brick and mortar building, but where social distancing is being. I know if you send my 2nd grader to school, first thing he's going to do is tackle all of his buddies. I'm not sure how you're going to get him not to do that, but God bless you if you can.
So Bill, that's how I was, that's where I was going with those pragmatics, those social interaction skills, is that it's going to have to become part of the school rules and the classroom rules, the classroom expectations. And yes, that is very difficult for a kindergartner or a 2nd grader. It's even difficult for 6th graders. 6th graders still want to have those hugs. They want you to give them a hug and pat them on the back and tell them that everything is okay.
I'm 49 and I still want that.
That's what I was gonna say. I walk in my neighborhood, and just yesterday, a student was driving down the street, saw me walking, stopped their car in the middle of the street, jumped out and wanted to come hug me. So I'm in the middle of the street saying no. I know my students are going to want to be in my space. They're going to want to hug me, and it's not that they're going to be trying to get me sick, because that's not what it's about. That's part of us, I think, maybe us being in the South, the way my classroom is structured, that's part of how we show love and a appreciation of one another. So it is so ingrained in who we are that we're gonna accidentally forget. And it's not, no one is doing this on purpose. Like, we're not trying to make people get sick. And that was what I was gonna say earlier too, when it was made, the comment was made about not believing that this is real. Y'all, I promise this is real. I personally know people, and I'm not talking about people on Facebook who said their friend's friend, like people I know have lost, one friend I know lost his grandmother and his mother, and his sister right now is currently in ICU. I know people who have died from this, and it was because of simple things, being in spaces with people who did not know that they had coronavirus, and it just happened. So it's real, it's not intentional. This is me saying this is not me trying to get out of work or me not wanting to educate children, because I believe that that's my life's calling. I love what I do. I love being an educator, and I think that everybody deserves the right to a free education, period. But I want us to live. I want us to live so that we can be educated.
You know, you're so right with that, Stacy, and I think a lot of it comes back to our culture. And, you know, we have our community cultures, we have our school cultures. My mother, today is my mother's 80th birthday. And, you know, I haven't hugged my mom since before March 13th. And today's her 80th birthday. She's the only one in her family who has ever made it to the 80th birthday milestone. Everyone else has passed away at a younger age. And I would love to be able to hug my mom, but I know that if I do, I am putting her at risk. And I can't do that. And so, and COVID it's real. I know someone who is currently battling it, and it's a serious virus, and we have got to ensure that people follow the precautions. And I always say, tomorrow is not promised. Today is a gift. And we have to ensure that we take advantage of today, but we take care of ourselves so that we can have a tomorrow.
Bill, just a brief comment on that as they're talking about the kids and their needs and needing the hugs and needing that interaction. We as adults need that too. And I wish I knew the date this was ending. I knew that it was September 10th or March 5th or when it was going to be ending. But it's, you know, but it's going to be interesting to see. I mean, there are going to be books, dissertations, everything written for years and decades to come about this event and what it meant to us as a society. I think one of the things that's going to be very interesting and somewhat sad probably to see is the toll it has taken, not just on the education environment, but on the emotional and mental environments of our students, our adults, and others. It's a tremendous toll. These kids that are not getting this attention. I talked about at the very beginning about that interaction between the teachers and the students. I think that might be as great a toll on our society as the education loss. It's hard to equivocate the two.
I think it's that, and it's also food security. So many of our children, you know, they come to the school because that's where they find security and where they find support. And that's where a lot of our children, they get their meals for the day, is when they come to our schools. And that is something that has really impacted our children, because we have to make sure that they have that food to, you know, nutritionally support them. We have to support them emotionally, psychologically, and nutritionally. And that's why they come to us at these schools, because we are the experts in being able to meet their educational, psychological, emotional, and nutritional needs. That's what we provide as educators to our children.
And we have quite a few questions that are still to be asked. And I know that we won't get to all of them. I want to thank all of the persons who submitted questions. And it is my hope that we can create a list of those questions and make those available on our webpage, because these are questions that need to be asked locally of your school districts. So hopefully you'll use that list once it's generated. Go ahead, Bill.
I was just going to say, you hit it right on the head. We're going to take this list of questions and we're going to post it on our website, and we're going to do our best talking to our panelists here and some other experts to get some answers to put in there where we have them. But there are a lot of great questions here. The other thing I'll just say is we will also do some follow-up. There's clearly a lot of interest. We had over 300 participants at one point in time on the call. We're starting to run a little long, but we will clearly have a need to do some follow-up sessions where we dive maybe deeper into one particular area or another. So
I was just going to jump on and tell everyone that I have to leave. I had a 7:30 that I pushed back to 7:45, so I gotta go. But thank you guys so very much for allowing me the opportunity to come and share a couple things that was on my mind and my heart. And yeah, thank you.
Thanks to you, Stacy. We appreciate you for coming on. Bye now. Bill, the time is 7:44, and I don't know if we need to wrap this up at this point and allow our panelists to have one final or a final closing remark here. Is that where we need to go at this point?
You are our chair, so I will follow your lead here.
Do you have one last burning question that we just must get in tonight?
There's a lot of, there's so many
No,
great questions.
then we will go.
I was giving you a long version of no, so you keep going.
Okay. All right. Then we're going to have our panelists give us some parting wisdom here. Whatever thing that they think we need to know going forward as in our communities, specifically to the people asking the questions, the participants on the calls, ways that they can go and engage and be productive in their engagement back in their communities. Bill, I'm sorry, Carol, Tony?
Thank you, Alice. So I think what's important is communication. Communication is key. Participate in community and school meetings. Provide public comment. In order to move forward, you have to decide what is going to be that district level decision. That is what is going to happen. The district will be making those decisions. So educators, parents, and others in the school community, they need to make sure that they ask to be part of that district's community to craft the Ready for Learning plan, or at a minimum, contact your superintendent to make sure any of your questions or concerns are heard. District plans are going to vary based on the needs of your district. What works for one is not going to work for another. And remember, ultimately, the decision on when to reopen should rely on medical experts. However, how we reopen should be based on the advice of educators, all educators, and all community stakeholders. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. Tony?
I would echo what Carol has said, that communication is paramount during this time. The things are changing, evolving from day to day, week to week. I would encourage all districts to have a comprehensive communication plan with all of your stakeholders that has full engagement to where parents are informed, teachers informed, students informed, community members are informed, so that they will be able to make informative decisions. And the last thing I guess that I would say is that it's going to take us all working together. This isn't a time to be segmented and divided. It is a time to be pulling together for our kids in any ways. That doesn't mean that you don't take a stand. You've got to take a stand, and you've got to ask those hard questions of everyone. But the key is going to be information, transparency, making sure that everyone is involved, that you're speaking with one voice on what is best for our student body.
Is Ms. Wright on?
I think we just had trouble there.
We want to give you a chance to have a last comment. Okay. Then I will have a last word, and then Bill will close us out. Thanks to our panelists for coming in tonight and sharing their wisdom with us and giving us some resources that we can all go and look at so that we can ask intelligent and informed questions of our school officials. Thank you, Bill, for asking me to be a part of this. And you're on.
Thank you for leading us. I appreciate that. Y'all, we had, I'm just looking at we had over 300 participants at one point in time tonight. So clearly we've got an issue that a lot of you care about. And I really appreciate you sharing your time and giving us your questions and your comments. We had 29 questions. It looks like we answered in some level, and an open 35, still more to go. So we're going to post those to our website, and we're going to plan some follow-up forums where we dive deeper into some of the specifics here. You know, the only thing that I'll say in closing is that really it seems like the state has pushed so much of the decision-making to the local level. And so you being involved locally is just absolutely critical. And I realize that in a lot of districts that participation from stakeholders is very welcomed, but in other districts it's not. And if you're in a district where it's not, and it's difficult and hard to get your voice heard and to get your concerns, get together with some of your neighbors. You can contact the AEA if you're an education professional. If you're in a school board, you can contact Tony's group, the School Board Association. If you're just a community member, you can contact us. And you know, we don't have the capacity to go organize in every community in the state, but if you can get some neighbors together, we're happy to get on the phone or a Zoom with you and help you all talk about your issue and see if there's not some advice we can offer from our perspective. So please stay involved. This is a crazy time. And I think, you know, as a parent of 2 young kids, I know how uncertain everything is. And I just appreciate all of you being with us tonight. Ms. Love, or is that it?
Thanks to all who participated. Yes, thanks to everybody who participated, and have a good evening.
Thank you, Carol and Tony. And thank you, Stacy, who's gone. And thank you, Danielle. Bye, y'all.
Bye.